With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful ends for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast with Michael Thompson. That'd be me.
Yeah.
And I'm with S.J. Jennings. That'd be you.
That'd be me.
And I'm hanging out, too, tonight with Greg Sailors.
Yeah.
That'd be you.
Good to be here.
So we got teammates from the Zoweh team on as we continue to move into Father's Day and fatherhood.
And move back into the studio. I mean, this is the third one we've actually been able to be back in the studio again, which is great.
Yeah. You're closer than 6 feet, but you're still pretty good. And this is part 3. And it really looks like, man, we're going to get to do a part 4 because fatherhood in 4 sessions, right? There's books about this. There's lots of things that need exploring. But to just recap, we offered this, right, SJ, as kind of some secrets to fathering, some really important components that we've learned over the last decade or so. Man, I wish I'd had this, Greg. Your kids are younger, 4 boys. What's their age?
13, 10, 7, 2.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to have this back. I didn't get oriented, right? And we talk a lot about that until my kids were 10, 13, and 15. So we're trying to recover from some of those years still. They're being patient with me in a great way. But dads, men, we started with the most important thing you can do for the hearts of your kids is to get your heart back.
It's the most important thing you can do for your marriage.
It's the most important thing that you can do for any and every relationship.
Right. Just getting your heart back.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of ground zero. And yet I would love to go to dad camp, have a week or a month to do that, and then kind of get reinserted, but it doesn't really happen that way.
Yeah,
it didn't happen that way in our lives.
Very much live fire training.
Yeah, you don't get to take a break from being a father to do that, usually more than a weekend.
And yet, man, we found that it's in fatherhood that God really wants to raise some of these things in our lives that need treatment, need healing, need attention. Yeah, need Him.
Oh, I don't know if we said this or not, but there are few people on the planet that can provoke my false self more quickly than my son. I mean, and that's getting better, right?
Yeah.
I think back on some of those things I said to him when he was 8, 9, 10, whatever years old, through gritted teeth. I mean, it was...
Right.
So,
which brings us to the second podcast in the series was, You Will Wound Them.
Right. And
instead of rehashing that painful.
No, it's because we're wounded, right?
Yeah. So, wounded hearts wound hearts. And whether we learn certain ways from our fathers or other authority figures, I really believe the objective that I have now is wounding them less.
Right.
It's one way to say it. Fighting for the hearts of your kids, wound them less.
Wound them less.
And you wound them less by getting your heart back.
That's right.
And becoming oriented to the larger story that you're in, how it works, who you are in it, and the good God's up to in your life, because they're in the same story. That's great news. That's hard news.
Right.
They're in the same story, whether they're 25 or they're, what's our youngest in this?
3.
3. Yeah, 3.
I think this is important to turn to. And if we need to, we'll do 2 sessions on this. But fighting for the hearts of your kids, those are the first 2 things. Get your heart back and then recognize, just like you were wounded by your dad, by your mom, by your siblings, by the world that the enemy uses to steal, kill, and destroy, right? Then what we want to do is break that part of the legacy, break
those agreements,
chains, and break that off and begin to set a new trajectory that we don't have to live less, those places of woundedness or where we're stuck. And there are clues. Fighting for the hearts of your kids, as you said, I think it's important, SJ. When they provoke something in me, you want to do your best to get through that moment without poking, provoking, wounding them. And then it's kind of like, get in the truck, get in the closet. Jesus, what is that about? What's going on in me? To be able to pay attention to what's going on in you while you're wrestling with and dealing with what's going on around you with your children, that's the hard job. That's the job.
Yep, it is.
That's the job.
And having 4 boys, they reflect 4 different parts of my personality. It's so interesting, to see that. And I can see my own woundedness transfer to them. I mean, this is a whole big story about that, but goodness.
Yeah.
Seeing their reflection is such an invitation for my training circle to be better.
So the image I would want our listeners to have is just think about the mafia, right? The organized crime of the kingdom of darkness. And so here are these agents of darkness like, okay, so what you got on Greg? Let's get the file here. What you got on Chrissy? Bring Chrissy's file in here.
That sounds like North Jersey right there. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And so, okay, let's look at the files. Oh yeah, we can work this into the boys.
Right. Let's mix these 2 things together.
I know that sounds silly and funny. It is not.
It's not.
Far from the reality.
And that's what the enemy does. He uses people in this context that we're talking about to provoke the false self and to invite you to wound your children.
Because the false self will wound.
Not just wounding them, but you begin to relive some of the woundedness as you see that part of you that you dislike in them.
So if that's the case, then that's the evidence that you need.
Right.
When that moment happens, this could be an invitation to your own healing.
Exactly.
Not only your own healing, but also attending to the mess you just made.
Right.
When you found that the enemy just used you because you can see it on their face, this fighting for the hearts of your kids is very much about paying attention.
Yeah. And so what I'm about to say, too, may sound like a spoiler. So spoiler alert. I mean, it sounds like the kind of thing you'd say at the end of the podcast, but I'm going to say it near the beginning. Fighting for the hearts of your kids, listeners, is not always, not necessarily, and what we're espousing is that it's really more about fighting for your own heart and listening to what God is trying to reveal to you as you interact with them. It's not that you don't fight for them, that you don't go before them and represent them and advocates for them. Those things are true, but that's not really what we're talking about in this podcast. What we're talking about is the way that you fight for your children is that you learn how to wield your authority in the kingdom to be able to be aware of what's going on around you and in your own heart.
Yeah. As I say amen to that, I have a question I want to ask you guys. But what I love about that, SJ, is even by the title, Fighting for the Hearts of Your Kids, it's almost a presumption that's going to be like against the other people who are going to hurt them.
Right.
And this is really about protecting them from your false self. From your woundedness. Fighting for the hearts of your kids starts there.
And for those of you that misread the title of the podcast and thought this was about fighting with your kids, like how to fight with your kids. I guess it's not untrue. We're talking about that too, right? Because you have to know how to handle conflict, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're talking about too.
Let's start here, Greg and SJ. If getting your heart back is actually training for seeing and protecting and going after theirs, how has God shown you that is indeed true? That getting your heart back, how does that relate? We did the New Jersey thing, the mafia, the files. Right. How have you seen that going after your own heart and healing is actually shrinking your file so the enemy can use less? How's that worked in your guys' story?
Certainly back to the reflection, like I was saying earlier, I'm very much aware right now when I see Jackson, who's becoming a 14-year-old really soon, particularly all the boys, but as he's getting older, I'm seeing things that reflect the way I was when he was 6 or 7, and knowing that that's not true of me anymore. And it gives me an opportunity to go back and say, son, I'm seeing you act this way, or have this kind of invitation from the enemy that you're reacting to. And let me tell you what God did in my life, in my own story, to overcome whatever that particular thing was.
Yeah.
And that's happened multiple times, and maybe a few times with Luke, who's 10. But that's one of the things that I see day by day is that reflection.
So you see it in watching your boys even relate and treat
each other or their mother.
Or okay, gotcha.
Or their friends.
Yeah, that's great.
If you can get past your own storm of stuff in your mind and be able to be at peace and watch for a moment, you're going to see yourself very quickly in your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. One quick story for me, SJ, as you prepare to jump into this too. I had an intensity about me. I had an anger, especially when they would get hurt or hurt one another. When my girls would hurt one another, when they were responsible for that, swinging something carelessly or going too fast and, knocking a sister over, those were false self-sightings when they were young. in me. And I saw that, Greg. My dad got pretty angry. That's the most intense and the most angry I would ever see him when we hurt each other.
Right.
I get it. I'm really not mad at my girls. I'm mad at what happened. I'm mad that they're hurting. But when you come in moving towards them, what are you doing? Stop. I can't believe you did. I mean, all of that, I can see it in their faces, right? But at the time, that's what I want. I want you to be afraid. I want you to be startled into, no, not good. I remember that happened to me.
Right.
My dad, those intense moments where something didn't go right, something didn't go well, and punishment's coming. But actually, it's already begun as they're moving towards you.
Right.
And as my parents were moving toward me, as I moved toward my kids.
Well, and your dad's not a guy that's exactly small in stature either.
No.
So when you're a little 10-year-old skinny guy, and that dude comes at you, I mean, that's scary. We just don't think about it, in the moment. We just don't think about our physical presence. And I'm not a small guy either. So physical presence was a big deal with me in relationship to Stephen growing up. I made myself pretty big like that, And again, a lot of times I was afraid of what might happen to him, and I was disoriented for the vast majority of his childhood. So not making excuses, but just an explanation. And I remember his telling me about his friends that would come over from high school, and they'd all be afraid of me. Like, I'm not trying to be intimidating or be scary or anything. He said, you just look them in the eye and talk directly to them, and it scares them. I had to keep that in mind, even now as he's 25 years old, I have to keep those things in mind. And I think, Michael, the journey that I've kind of been on, and I referenced this in the previous 2 episodes, this journey of vulnerability and learning more about the little boy in my own heart, I'm recognizing more and more the things that happened to that little boy I did to my own son.
Right.
I perpetuated the same lies and the same untruths that were delivered to me. So as I'm journeying through that, I get to circle back around because, again, I've been able to earn the right to talk to him about some of these things. There was a period in our relationship where I don't know that I really had his permission, though I didn't wait to get it. But we've done some work, he and I, in our relationship. And so now I can broach some of those topics with him and seek forgiveness and ask him about his experience and see how he experienced me and some of the damage that I did so that we can recapture that,
Yeah.
Again, we talked about this in the earlier sessions. This is not necessarily a list of how to be a good parent. Or how to be the great dad. No. And lists aren't all bad.
I'm giving them a list.
That's fine. That's fine. So maybe this is a good segue to go into that. But before we break, one of the keys to it is learning how to listen. Learning how to listen to your kids and not wait to talk. I'm talking about listening. And those are 2 different things.
I'm going to tie that back to the question about getting your heart back. How's that been training for them? So some of these awakenings for me, getting healing for my heart and going to Jesus with the times that my dad's intensity, his anger. And I'm not saying we didn't make mistakes or disobey. I'm not saying that. It wasn't just out of...
that you weren't sometimes
come
deserving.
In the door, swinging.
Right.
Where are they? That I didn't grow up with that.
Right.
Some people did. But, the way that was done to me and for me became a way that I did it to and for my girls. So the healing that I got there, right, Greg, that became so helpful in altering my way with them.
No doubt.
The consistency in a bad way and now the consistency in a good way. And so listening, right? If you were trying to explain to your mom and dad and they just cut you off, odds are great that when your kids are trying to explain, you're practicing now the cutoff.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't want to listen to your excuses or I don't have time
Those
for
are
your
the tapes.
BS.
And they may have been 30, 20 years dormant, right? From 10 to 30. But now you got a 10-year-old, you got a 14-year-old. And now
the first time they don't come back home when they're supposed to
is how you'll often handle hearts. Before we take the break, that's just really a very important component of fighting for the hearts of your kids. Paying attention, like you said, seeing it. And it's painful, right? When you see something in your son or daughter that you don't like, the first place to go is that true in me, Jesus? Did I teach him that?
It's so interesting with multiples too, having 4, and then having a 3-year-old and a 14-year-old, the different exposures to me. Even Jackson, I mean, the message of the heart, if you will, it was wild at heart before it was the heart of a warrior. getting this training before then, before Jackson was even born. But yet, wounds still happen, right? All the things. And now to see, because of you guys and your vulnerability, SJ, and others, your stories, you do wound them less. Mm-hmm. It's just the bottom line.
When we wound them,
it's a different way.
The recovery, really restoration is different. It's a very different game. So we got to talk about that when we get back, about fighting for the hearts of your kids. We'll be right back.
Here's a message for you dads from the Zoweh team. Father's Day is coming up, and we want to encourage you. You've got this. Being a dad is a tremendous role, and it's one of the toughest jobs a man can step into. Whether you're attempting to blaze a trail or you're trying to step into your father's footsteps, every dad is needed. Because we believe that dads are so important, this Father's Day we're offering 2 resources to equip and encourage dads for their role. One is the 14-day devotional ebook, Being Fathered by God. It's foundational to get your heart back in order for you to be able to step in and fight for the hearts of your kids. The second resource is an audio recording from one of the Heart of a Warrior conference sessions entitled, Fighting for the Hearts of Your Kids. Your children live in the same story that you do. And what if your dad had had a battle plan to better protect and provide for your heart? Go to Zoweh.org and click on Explore Offers to download these resources. That's ZOWEH.org. One last thing. We are featuring a $5 additional discount on the Heart of a Warrior book. Use the coupon code HEART5. That's HEART 5. And remember, before you can become the warrior, you have to become the beloved son. Be encouraged, dads. You got this.
All right, welcome back, listeners. Talking about fighting for the hearts of your kids. Third session, looks like out of 4 now, as we talk about fatherhood.
I just thought it was cool. You said, welcome back, listeners, because, consider yourself, listeners, a listener, right? As you approach interacting with your children, and your relationship with them will start to change. And when we say listen to them, yes, listen to your children. Don't be the cutoff guy. Don't be the minimizer, the diminisher. But part of this art, part of this dance that we're proposing is to listen to your children, but also to listen to your own heart at the same time. And that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about listening. It's not just an external, it's an internal listen as well. Like we've already covered it, but I just want to make sure we understand that's what we're proposing, that your children can provoke things or bring up memories. So as you're talking to them and working through whatever it is you have to work through, or commending them for something they did well, or whatever it is, I don't want to make it, an implication that the only time you talk to your kids' dads is when they did something wrong. But listening to your heart simultaneously is crucial.
I think partial of that is knowing and being known. We like to say that at Zoweh a lot when it comes to relationships in the allies world, particularly with friendships. We're always talking about knowing and being known, knowing each other's stories. Well, obviously you were there with their story, but you might not know how they're interpreting their story. And so we like to talk about being curious at Zoweh quite often, asking the right kind of questions and letting them talk. And even if they are replying back to you in such a way that you know that they're wounded and hurt, you got to let them go.
Yeah. And all of this is in this category, right, of listening. You're listening for their heart. You're listening to what's going on inside of you. What's this raising up in you? This frustration, this anger. As I've tried to employ this awareness like you're talking about, SJ, and listening, what's really helped me, Greg, is I've actually found myself addressing the real issue, not the behavior or not the request or not what they were initially upset about. All 3 of my girls, all of them, it's other people get to do that. Why can't I? That's unfair. I said the same stuff, right? In some of those teenage years, curfew, got to be home, this and that. So when I began to see what they were really wanting, they don't want to miss out. They don't want to be left out. When they step out of boyhood and girlhood and into ranger and into the explorer, into that part of the masculine or feminine journey that begins to move outside the house, oh my gosh, man, that is a playground and a battleground that they want to be accepted, they want to be included, they want to be invited. And if you think it's that they want to, quote, misbehave, no, there's a whole lot more going on. But if you address the behavior and not some of those core desires, you're going to miss their heart. We have just been talking about this, Greg, in the last several months, right? Between us as friends even, how could I have handled that differently?
Oh, yeah, man. So I'll share this because it just popped into my head. We didn't go to church a lot when Stephen was little because we just didn't go to church then. We weren't Christians, neither Sherry nor I. But she had started to want to go, and so we went to this little, I think it was a Methodist church in Clinton, Connecticut, where we used to live. Stephen's probably 5 years old, maybe. We're sitting there in the service, and it takes about 5 minutes, and he's squirming around, and he's starting to whine, and people are starting to turn around and look and that. So I've kind of got my arm around him, and I just give him a little pinch on the side. Well, that kid lets out a wail like he was on the front of a fire truck. Like he sounds like and then he goes, "Dad, why did you pinch me?"
That's a backfire.
In the middle of the service, man. So I think I got him and got up and left or whatever. We walked out to the back of the foyer or whatever it was. But it's a great example of I was not trying to go after his heart and parent him in terms of his character. And it's okay that you're bored. You're 5 years old. I get it, And honestly, I don't know, however old I was, and I was somewhat bored too, but that's not a commentary on the Methodist church. That's just where I was at the time. But instead of addressing him and kind of meeting him where he was, I was trying to parent his behavior and trying to get him to settle down and stop bringing attention to himself, and to me.
And don't embarrass
which was
me.
Embarrassing me, obviously fully backfired in my face because now I was more embarrassed than ever. But it really is a situation where you're parenting them because you don't want them to embarrass you.
Yeah. So one of these things, right, as the lists kind of come out in fighting for the hearts of your kids is be careful to not make it about you.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And about how you look or how you felt. They'll pick up on that. There's a shot at their value, their importance, just that quick. If you've ever embarrassed me like that again, I'm not saying that they
don't know what I said to him, but
Here's the funny thing. We three could sit here and pick that apart and say, well, here's what we could have, should have, would have done, right?
Right.
Arm around, maybe take him out before, hey, I know it's hard, buddy. You're 5. Hey, here's some candy. Here's some Legos. Some crayons.
What if I give you some Legos to play with?
Crayon,
something,
iPad, back in the day.
Things that I wasn't prepared for or that I didn't foresee how they could go. That's when my agenda gets disrupted by my little DNA bearer and all of a sudden, I'm scooping them up and I'm pretty intense. Heading out the door, and they're feeling that. They're seeing that and hearing that.
Here's a tip. Don't write, "Hey, my little DNA bearer" in a birthday card. Let's not do that.
Yeah. So glad.
That was funny. I know what you meant.
Yeah. We'll get it back into the list here in just a minute.
Sorry.
I think with that intensity, Greg, if I could go back again, I would want to be more safe for my girls.
Oh my gosh, no question.
Yeah, I agree. And one of my greatest wounding moments in my own heart and with my kids was a time that I wasn't safe for Luke. And I took Kim and Jackson, my 2 oldest, on a camping trip. He was 2. Here's another hint. Don't take a 2-year-old camping.
That's right.
Not a good idea.
Sounds
especially
like
if you're not in the backyard. If you're in the backyard, maybe.
That's different, right? Set up the tent in the backyard.
Backpacking. You're in a state park behind a locked door now, and it's now about 12 o'clock a.m., and he's still not asleep. And you've given him melatonin. You've done everything to try to get this kid asleep, but he wants mom, and he's scared, right? And so what do? Well, I didn't react very well, and I gave him a spanking at 2. God bless, don't write in, people. By the way, I'm better than that now. But yeah, so did that and jerked him up with Jackson, had to go to the ranger station, wake the ranger up and go home. Tears the whole way. He falls asleep on the way home. And I just pretty much cried and lost it the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And honestly, until I had a healing moment with this probably about 3-4 years ago, I was trying to make it up to Luke ever since.
Mm.
And he doesn't remember. He was 2. But that doesn't mean he couldn't sense it.
Impact him.
Or it didn't impact him.
Right.
And if that kid cries now, and I'm involved, I mean, I'm right back there again to that hurt.
Yeah, let's talk about if we're going to wound them, and actually that's going to be some pretty good intel and information, an invitation at least to talk to God about what was that about? What was stirring in me? Where did that come from? Right? Listen to God, listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk a little bit about how we've learned to apologize, because this is a really important fighting for the hearts of your kids weapon, tool, technique, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be apologetic, to ask them even a few questions, because you didn't ask them before. Here's the point. You didn't ask them before. So the wounding happens, or you actually miscalculated what even it was, or you were intense with them. So now you got a chance to ask a few questions after.
Yeah. I grew up with a dad and a brother that loved old TV shows like Leave It to Beaver or Andy Griffith or whatever. And the dads apologized back then. I always remember how much that, left an impact on me when Andy would go apologize to Opie. And usually Opie was trying to do something right by somebody else. And so he might have lied a little bit, right, in order to cover up, in order to do what was right in his eyes. But that always impacted me. And the other thing that impacted me in that is my dad, when he would apologize, he never apologized in anger like, I'm sorry. Oh, I know I shouldn't have did that. It was never that way. It was always heartfelt in front of me, touching my shoulder, physical touch, hugs afterwards, sometimes tears. And it was that kind of example that really led me with my kids to try to create that safe and humbling environment of Dad was wrong. I'm so sorry that I was wrong. And then as we've learned, we let them respond and we listen, like you said, SJ, to what is their response. And rather than just even correcting their response right away, you let it linger a little bit.
Yeah.
And that linger can tell you a whole lot about their hearts and where their hearts are. And then you'll know what to do next. And it's back to live fire training. I mean, you have to be in the moment, fully present, and know their story. And so being able to really say, I'm sorry, and truly mean it. And they sense that.
So
they
the
know.
Questions allow you to say, right, Greg, I'm sorry for being so intense or scaring you.
Or even inviting them to, how did that make you feel?
Right. That's a great question.
Yeah, I think the initial is...
Tell me what's going on in your head. What were you thinking?
The initial apology, the whole reason for it then is to open up the dialogue.
Yeah.
And to make it a safe thing to talk about and make you safe again to be with. I'm so sorry, buddy. I so obviously missed your heart with that. Can we talk about it a little bit more? Not I'm so sorry, buddy, but you wouldn't believe the day I had.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so sorry, buddy, but
you took me to the edge.
Or
don't you know?
But that was a family heirloom. Or anytime there's a but after you say you're sorry, it absolutely negates the apology. It undoes any of it. So don't do that. So just say, and we're speaking from experience. We've all done it, right? Yeah. So it never goes well. So I'm sorry. Obviously, I missed your heart. I hurt your heart. I hurt you, whatever it might be. Can we talk about that some more?
Yeah.
Is a great place to start.
I love that, SJ, and the idea continually, like we've been talking about being curious. I've also learned not to ascribe what I think I should be sorry about to them. And I think this is a big point, at least for my family, because I can say, Michael, I'm so sorry that I hurt your feelings for X, whatever X is. Well, they're not even worried about X. I found out that they're worried about Y.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like, really? I mean, you just want to say that's what you're upset about, little guy? No doubt.
So often the X is about me and not about their heart.
And that's why I think that open-endedness, I obviously missed your heart, hurt your heart, didn't handle your heart well. Yeah. Can we talk more about it?
Yeah, and then let them tell you what it was.
Lots in this and important things that we're going to continue in another podcast with some more of these do's and don'ts, some more of these things we've learned, right? Our list here of 6 or 7 more things that I have, I'm going to forego till session 4, but I think we're on a very important restoration and recovery path from false self-parenting to more and more true self. I want to talk next time about validating the glory in them, the goodness, right? Somebody said it. I remember hearing it, jotted a note down. I don't want my kids only to hear from me when it comes to correction, direction.
Right, when they've done something wrong.
Something that needs, an authoritative figure, but really to be in the celebrations and to be in the compliments, to be in the encouragement, that their hearts need, that our hearts needed and still need and look for. I think I want to wrap this up, though, with how is God fathering you as you father your kids right now?
That's such a good question. It's a day-by-day answer, honestly. The reflection thing that I started out with is I'm beginning to wake up, now 42, more and more to the way I look in my children. And as I do that, I see the good, bad, and the ugly. And God is giving me a list, if you will, of, like we were talking about apologizing earlier. He comes to me and says, hey, buddy, see that? That's your heart right there. And that's a good thing, maybe. Or, hey, buddy, see that? Let me take your hand and let's walk through that together. So it's an invitation. It's not condemnation by any means. Conviction, yes, sometimes, but it's an invitation into more, because I see things that I don't want to be that way, and I don't want them to be that way.
Yeah, man.
I would say, as I alluded to earlier, we've done some work, my son and I, to get to where we're getting better and better and able to talk about some things. So what's interesting about that is now he feels safe enough to come to me at 25 years old with his questions about life and about relationships and about taxes and about saving money and about all these things, right? So now he feels safe enough to come to me, and I see his desire, his need for fathering in his life. And what God is bringing out in me is that I'm still trying to work through why I don't desire that and why I don't feel a need for it or a want
in your
for
life,
it in my
heart.
life.
Not
fathering him, the being fathered, me being fathered. Let me just paraphrase. My ability to father Stephen and do some things with him, show him how to do some things, talk through some things with him as he's trying to make decisions because of the work he and I have done with God, has really revealed to me how little I want fathering in my own life.
So the contrast has become pretty obvious.
It's pretty obvious, yeah. And I'm working back through, again, my journey as a little boy. When did I make that decision that I didn't need anybody and that I was on my own and I could figure it all out?
Yeah.
And when did that turn into this agreement? Even, Greg, in his good heart, he wants to teach me fly fishing, and he talks about fathering me that way. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. We can go, we'll go together, we'll have a good time, but I don't want you to do that. You know what I mean?
Yes,
And I couldn't have articulated it that way then a couple of years ago when Greg invited me to do that. So yeah, it's an interesting journey of what God is revealing through now my healed relationship with my son and my ability to father him, my need for fathering, woundedness that took place there. I don't know that I would have ever gotten to that place where I could see that. You know what I mean? Without having gone on this journey thus far. What about you, buddy?
I had the privilege of editing first, being part of the editing process with Robin and Ashley's book that they've been writing that'll come out later this fall. So I'm telling you, brothers, when you get to read your daughter's writing about how you handled her heart, there's just the stories that she's telling. It wasn't like in one chapter. I mean, it's like kind of spaced in different places. I remember when, and some of them I remembered, and others I was like, where was I? That's been something God has absolutely used to bring me closer and say, okay, you're going to need to not put some armor on. I'm going to need you to take all your armor off.
Right.
I want you to feel these things. This is her reality. This is what she feels and thinks. This is not about who's right or if. And so that's been a real gift. And it's taken me into some conversations with her. And I need, frankly, more still to come. But that's where I learned I wasn't very safe for her, whether it was intensity or just getting some mess wiped up quickly and not listening and not taking time. So God's been fathering me in that space. The thing that would have been silly to assume that it was only with her, my oldest, right?
I was just thinking, man, you got two more of them.
There's 3 of them total.
So, she's got 100 in her file.
But what a joy, though. Honestly, we joke, but what a joy to be able to do that. And joy is not always happy. Right?
Well,
So,
and have a conversation, SJ, that I didn't have at the time, that I should have had at the time.
right. Reclamation.
And just like Opie kind of jumps into Andy's arms, so far, There's been forgiveness. There's been owning it, seeing that that's not what I wanted to do. That's not how I wanted to do it. Would you forgive me? And to have some of those moments with them. Here's the fighting for the hearts of your kids part. You don't want the enemy having that stuff on you, in them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got enough ammo already. Why let him keep these boxes, and take it back from him?
Because most of us would say we would take a bullet for them, we would die for them. But most of us would say, but I'll argue with you about that. No.
Yeah.
This is where the bullets are, and this is where to fight for their hearts. You got to hear where they are. You got to hear how they felt. You got to see it. And so now I think at their ages, that's what I'm saying. We're actually operating in more and more real time now, rather than going back to the files when they were younger. You guys know this. I'm just going to say one more thing. I had my dad at Heart of a Warrior West last fall.
Yeah.
And to see him there, and to see him engage, and to be the son, and to have my pops there just walking in this message, exploring this. It's one of the greatest weekends of my life.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't next to him the whole time, but it was like he was in the stands. I was playing again. I was engaged in my role of sharing and guiding and teaching men. And then I'd come around a corner and there's my dad on a rock with his journal.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? The talks that we had, Greg and SJ, were about his dad, my grandpa, and then him saying to me, I know we need to talk about some of our stuff. Just that was like, oh.
It's okay, Dad. We're good. We don't need to talk.
You're the best.
Oh, I forgive you.
So good.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's been a long time. He's been more than a cheerleader in so many ways for years, just like we feel that way about our kids. But treating this stuff, going with God to get this stuff out of the way is so life-giving for their hearts. And it actually reestablishes your place in their lives. The older they get, they can understand and take these kinds of conversations that really, really matter. The holiness, right? The intensity in a beautiful way, and the holiness of that. So let's come back with one more show. There's some more things that we didn't get to
on our list of things. Again, it's not a to-do list, but it is a list of what we've learned. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, so listeners, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or just want to share something with us, our email address is exploringmore@zoweh.org. And we would ask you, if you could take the time, it would really help us out if you would rate, review, and share on your podcast platform of choice. And speaking of podcast platforms of choice, we're part of the Charisma Podcast Network now. So if we have listeners that found us through that network, welcome to the show. And we're on episode, 111, 112 here. So go back and check out some of our previous episodes. And we thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.